Thank you, Andrea. In total, we conducted interviews and focus groups for 85 people through our site visits, phone interviews, and focus groups. These included USFS staff from both the Conservation Education Office and Urban Connections, FFEC program representatives, including its creators and replicators, city stakeholders in Milwaukee and Chicago, such as teachers, nature center staff, and environmental educators, and lastly, FFEC alumni, teachers who have already completed the training in Vermont. Once all the data was gathered, we performed content analysis, basically drawing out repeated themes on our interview and focus group responses. We examined response frequencies, and eventually the themes were grouped into 6 major categories, which I will discuss momentarily. Results from these themes were used to develop recommendations for FFEC's implementation in Milwaukee and Chicago. As our final outputs, we have a written report and strategic communications plan that will be passed on to the Forest Service's Urban Connections program. Lastly, during our process, it was recommended that we create a website to keep stakeholders updated on our progress and to invite their comments. Here's a snapshot of our website. We updated this throughout the year and intend to post our report and presentation on it for all of the people we connected with during our process to view. Now for results and recommendations. After our analysis, we recorded detailed results and formed 30 recommendations for the Forest Service Urban Connections program to implement FFEC. We wanted to make sure that our deliverables met the Forest Service's needs, so instead of the traditional scientific style, we grouped results and recommendations into these 6 categories: getting started, partnerships, program design, urban adaptations, school support and recruitment, and curriculum implementation. In this presentation, we will follow the same format. For each of the 6 sections, we will provide a quote, selected findings, and related recommendations. So our first category is getting started. Results that fell under this category were essentially anything that would help inform how Urban Connections could begin the process of planning and implementation for FFEC in Milwaukee and Chicago. Here's an example quote from a Chicago teacher that we interviewed. "I work with a private school here in Chicago. I could tell you that we would love something like this. We have a lot more autonomy and flexibility with our curriculum, and we have explicit initiatives to start more project-based learning." So we found that teachers in private and specialty schools do tend to have more flexibility in terms of curriculum and in some cases funding, which allows them to more easily participate in a professional development program like FFEC, and then use the curriculum in their classrooms. Thus, from this quote and others collected on the same theme, we recommended that Urban Connections pilot the program with these teachers. They could prove the program's success and then use that proof to help move the program into public schools that probably need a program like this even more. Piloting FFEC in the cities would allow the piloting the FFEC program in these cities would allow the Forest Service to monitor, evaluate, and adapt the program at a small scale. We also recorded many findings about partnerships, related to the roles for partners, suggestions for partners, and how to achieve the best relationships with partners. As one Forest Service staff suggested, see if FFEC can add value to other successful programs. Don't compete. It was crystal clear after conducting our research that there were already many environmental education programs in both Milwaukee and Chicago. Nobody really wants the Forest Service to bring in a program that would compete with programs that are already doing successful work. And you can see from the quote that even those with the Forest Service feel strongly about this. So we recommended that the Forest Service collaborate with existing programs, building on the strengths that they already have. For example, some partners may be able to provide teacher networks or curriculum ideas. Including them as partners would ensure that FFEC does not compete with these programs for funding or participants. Also, with regard to partnerships, we recommended that Urban Connections partner with both internal Forest Service personnel and external partners in order to provide the support and expertise necessary for sustaining the program over the long term. Next is program design. This section gets at the strengths and areas for improvement within the design of the FFEC professional development program itself. One FFEC teacher described the program here. There are so many professional development courses and workshops you do where they stand in the front of the room and lecture you about how lecturing is a bad way to teach. FFEC wasn't that. We were doing things and being the students and getting dirty, and that made a huge difference. So the FFEC program has several strengths that the teachers appreciate. As illustrated in this quote, teachers like that the format is engaging. We also found that they like the fact that the professional development itself is based on the place-based education model that it teaches. In the recommendations for this section, we suggested that the Forest Service conserve the interactive and hands-on aspects of FFEC. It's also important that the program is immersive so that the teachers get to know their place while building relationships with each other. Lastly, the team suggested that the workshop environment meet both the social and professional needs of the teachers involved. For example, FFEC should provide teachers with the opportunity to engage with experts as well as share their experiences and expertise with other teachers. The next section is urban adaptations. Our results highlighted ways in which FFEC could be adapted to urban areas. As mentioned earlier, since FFEC was originally developed in Vermont, there were many suggestions that could make the program more effective and feasible in Milwaukee and Chicago. In one of our focus groups, a Milwaukee teacher commented, "Our playground is completely paved. 3 sides of our school are set back about 50 feet from sidewalks, and there's a slopey, rocky, grassy area, but that's about it. Lack of green spaces is a clear problem for schools in this city. While some schools have a basic lawn-like playground, some don't even have that." Funding and transportation were also identified as consistent challenges for schools in terms of going on field trips and reaching national forests. However, cities do have an abundance of resources that may even be in closer proximity to schools than those in rural areas, such as city parks or historical and cultural resources. Therefore, we recommended that FFEC help teachers find local resources that are easily accessible to their schools by working with them to create custom asset maps. Such a map would visually inventory green spaces, local experts, community organizations, potential funders, and other resources. The asset map could then be shared among teachers from the same school or different schools in a shared region. 2 other recommendations are highlighted here under the Urban Adaptations heading. We recommended that the teacher professional development workshops focus on urban environments and demonstrate how any amount of green space, from a windowsill plant to a city park, can be used to support teachers' curricula. Secondly, the teachers recommended changing the name of the program to reflect the unique urban environment. For example, an urban park for every classroom or a tree for every classroom. Next is school support and recruitment. It became clear that being able to demonstrate how the FFEC program could support schools and teachers would be key to recruiting them and obtaining their buy-in. Here, one Chicago teacher describes her challenges with the school system. "We have a mandated curriculum that is almost put down to the day as to where you are supposed to be, and so finding that flexibility and a trusted administrator to say, 'Look, this is really beneficial. I want to steer away from the scope and sequence that I have, and this is really going to benefit the students.'" So one avenue for turning administrators into allies is to specifically approach them with information about the program and directly garner their support. One recommendation that stems from quotes like this is to demonstrate FFEC's past successes to teachers and especially administrators to show that FFEC is a worthwhile program and investment for their teachers. A second recommendation is to recruit teachers in teams or small groups from the same school. In addition to creating an internal support network for the teachers, following this recommendation will help to keep programs going in schools despite the high turnover rates of teachers currently common in many inner-city schools.